Hello friends, I am Dr. Kuldeep Mohadikar. This is my 7th chapter from my series Literary Pearls, which is entitled as Thomas Gray's Poetry Bears the 18th Century Stamp with reference to Elegy written in country churchyard. So Gray belongs to the group of poets who marked the transition from the neoclassical poetry of the 18th century to the romantic poetry of the 19th century. In other words, his work shows the relation between the poetry of the New Age and that of the 18th century. Several aspects of his poetry show the trends in the direction of romanticism, but he could never really escape from the spirit of the age in which he lived. This means the poem Elegy written in the country churchyard, though possessing romantic qualities like melancholy and emotional appeal and suggestiveness, bears also the stamp of 18th century neoclassical influences. The poem has neoclassical quality, and Gray has frequently used personifications such as ambition, grandeur, memory, honor, flattery, knowledge, penury, luxury, pride, forgetfulness. Gray has also frequently used capital letters for certain words like a prude, tyrant, ashes, etc. The poem begins with what looks a drawing from nature. It is actually full of literary echoes. The bell tolling for the dying day comes from Dante. That unelegiac creature, the beetle, had already been consecrated to poetic purposes by Shakespeare and Collins, and the owl seems to be behaving in an extremely self-conscious manner. Gray is here less concerned with nature. He has concern for his readers. He wishes that his reader to lull into a resigned, acquiescent summer evening frame of mind. The opening picture is followed by some extremely obvious reflections about the sights which the rude forefathers of the hamlet will see no more. They are designedly obvious, again intended to establish the mood of calm acquiescence in which the poem must be studied. We then come to know what Gray really wants to say. I quote, "Nor you, a proud, impute to these the fault, if memory o'er the tomb no trophies raise, where through the long drawn easel and fretted fault, the pealing anthem swells the note of praise." I unquote. The proud come out badly, as their arrogance is pointless, since their end will be the same as everybody else's. The lines that follow on the rustic Hamptons and Miltons whose narrow lot has prevented their developing their capacities are often read mechanically because so many of them have become familiar quotations. Gray wants to say that in the society many such cases must occur, and also Gray feels that this part of the order of nature and therefore must occur in any conceivable society. I quote, "Full many a gem of purest ray serene, the dark unfathomed caves of ocean bear. Full many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness on the desert air." A flower probably prefers not to be plucked, and a gem can hardly be supposed to care whether it stays at the bottom of the sea or not. This is not a matter wholly for regret. The narrow lot of the villagers not only suppressed potential virtues but potential crimes prevented the brutality of a conqueror or the mercenary writings of a curt poet. It is noticeable that the literary vices get more space than the political, and one suspects that Gray is actually far more concerned with the frustrated poet than the frustrated rules. I quote, "The struggling pangs of conscious truth to hide, to quench the blushes of ingenious shame, or heap the shrine of luxury and pride." With license kindled at the muse's flame, we here realize that what is going on under the surface of the poem, the state of not being able to attain fame, is that of Gray himself. The consolation offered for waste and frustration in the human situation is consolation of Gray's own sense of waste and frustration, which no longer appears as a personal inadequacy, but as a part of must inevitably happen in all human life and nature. Gray is enabled to bear his own disappointments by seeing them in their wider setting of which they are part. The personal reference becomes more evident in the closing lines. The listless youth, muttering his wayward fancies in solitude and dying young, is in the first place Richard West, who, like Milton's Lycidas, cherished poetic ambitions that were frustrated by an early death. Secondly, he is Gray himself, also ambitious, hypochondriacal, and unhappy, and likely enough to come to a similar end. The epitaph sums up the whole and provides another argument, and to Gray, the final one, for the attitude of resignation which he wishes to establish. I quote, "No further seek his merits to disclose, or draw his frailties from their dread abode. There they like in trembling hope repose, the bosom of his Father and his God." I unquote. After this talk about success and failure, ambition and frustration, we realize that we have been talking in purely human terms, and they can never be enough. We do not know what success or failure is. The final judgment must rest with God, who alone can remedy human and natural injustice and complete its inefficiencies or insufficiencies, we can say. Elegy of Gray is finest poem. Its 18th century style is, however, unmistakable. The meditative and moralizing tone is its most marked feature. Poem teaches that proud and ambitious people should not mock at the humble dead who lie in the graveyard. Another lesson that the poem teaches is that by leading an obscure and poor life, one is saved from the pitfalls and temptations of life. I quote, "Far from the madding crowds, ignoble strife, their sober wishes never learn to stray." There is the apostrophe so frequent in neoclassical poetry. "Nor you proud, impute to these the fault, if memory over their tomb no trophies raise." There is the poetic diction in such lines as the breezy call of incense-breathing morn. Gray, as a true citizen of the mid-18th century, who is for the most part still within the neoclassic tradition, wrote such lines. In spite of the 18th century features, the Elegy is a great poem by any standards. In fact, Gray here almost achieves the classical ideal of the harmony of tone and perfection of form. A poem makes us realize what is lacking in the excessive intellectuality of the age of Pope. The Elegy indeed represents discipline without impoverishment. Reasoning and emotion are balanced here. There is no exaggeration of sentiment. Tears there are, but the tears are not accompanied by shrieks or gesticulations. The verse shows a majestic movement. Certain ideas receive an expansion that could not be surpassed. As for instance, I quote, "Full many flower is born to blush unseen, and waste its sweetness on the desert air, and on some fond breast the parting soul relies. Some pious drops the closing eye acquires." I unquote. The Elegy shows a very careful construction and an exquisite sense of proportion and order. It has been said that even Spenser did not achieve a fusion of rhythm and phrase more suitable to the matter to be conveyed than Gray does in the Elegy. So this was all about Elegy written in the country Churchyard, bears the 18th century stamp. Thanks friends.